Hey everybody, Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here. Today I'm back with another episode of the Diamonds in the Rough series. I know you've been waiting with bated breath for it. But which console will I be covering today? Well, you probably already know if you read the title of the video. But for those who didn't, the PlayStation 1. I've recently begun collecting heavily for the PS1 because, like I said in the last pickups video that I released, I'm going for a complete Psygnosis console set, and they released quite a large amount of games for the PS1, so I'm kind of focused on that right now. It's turning out to be quite an easy console to collect for. Sure, there are a number of games that are really expensive, well beyond my means, and sure, I probably won't be able to get a lot of the ones that I'm looking for, but for the most part, you can find these games anywhere from between $1 to $10, and you'll get some really good stuff. Sure, it is fair to say that the PS1 has not aged very well. When it comes to the PS1, the N64, the 3DO, and the Sega Saturn, that was when the advent of 3D started to come into play, and everyone was just experimenting, trying to find out what you could do and make it fun. But it was this time when gaming was really exciting, and I remember my excitement whenever a new game that I was looking forward to was coming out, because it was usually going to be something that I haven't really played before, because everyone was trying out new things, and it was a lot of fun, and it was just a really cool time in gaming. I have a lot of very fond memories playing the PS1, and I'd honestly have to say it's probably my 5th favorite console of all time. And the PS1 had a massive library. I mean, we're talking huge. And I have a very sizable collection of my own. So how hard was it to narrow that collection down to about 10 selections for my Diamonds in the Rough? Was not easy. I had stacks of games, and I just whittled them down and said, yeah, maybe I'll save this one for the next Diamonds in the Rough for the PS1, but I gotta talk about this one today. These are 10 special games that I feel don't get a lot of love, don't get talked about very often, or just completely overlooked in their day. Get over it! The first game is a remake of a classic arcade game that ended up getting a sequel on another console, and then this is a port of that sequel to the PlayStation 1. And that's Tempest X Cubed. See, there's Tempest in the arcade, and then there's Tempest 2000 for the Atari Jaguar, and then this is basically a port of Tempest 2000, but they're actually considering this the third game in the series. It's complicated, it's crazy, whatever. It is awesome, that's all you need to know. So it follows the core concept of the original Tempest arcade game, where you are a little ship and you are gliding around a web that goes into the distance. You're flying around the edge of the web that faces the screen, and you are shooting enemies that are coming down the web towards you. It gets very crazy, it gets very hectic. I mean, it is just a basic shooter. And what they ended up doing was just upgrading the graphics. Atari revamped the game, they made it very psychedelic, they amped up the difficulty, they made it more frantic and frenetic, and the best part of the game is, oh my god, the music is fantastic, and it's very 1990s techno. But that's not a bad thing. And this features all the same music, all the same gameplay as Tempest 2000, plus a few new modes. You can play the original arcade version, you can play the Tempest 2000 version, and there's new mini games that I have added into it. There's just none finer when it comes to a fast twitch shooter. Although it is kind of stroby like crazy. I mean, if you are an epileptic, stay away from this game. It will drive you absolutely mental. And there is sometimes so much going on visually that it can be very confusing and frustrating. Your eyes will just go bang. Sometimes the sound effects are punch you in the eardrum loud. When you die, your character makes this loud popping sound, and it sounds like it's bursting my speakers. Outside of those slight minor quibbles, this is one of the most fun games available for the PS1 as far as I'm concerned, and you need to have it in your life. Yes! The PlayStation 1 featured a lot of new ideas and concepts that we had never seen before, and one of them was survival horror. Resident Evil started off this really cool genre of games that everyone ended up ripping off in some way. It was such a money-making juggernaut that no developer could ignore it. So there are a fair number of clones out there. Some are good, some are bad. I have a good one here. In Cold Blood by Dreamcatcher. The game is designed to be very survival horror-esque. The tank controls are exactly the same as Resident Evil. The camera angles, the pre-rendered backgrounds, except this one isn't a horror game. This is a spy thriller. You play as a CIA operative who's looking for a missing agent in Russia. You play through 9 missions of Resident Evil-esque action, minus the monsters. There's lots of really cool weapons and equipment that you can find. The story is very interesting. It's told in like a flashback where the main character is being tortured and he's recalling sections of the story about how he was looking for this agent to the people that are torturing him. And when he starts talking about the story, that's when you start playing the mission of the story he's talking about. The graphics are extremely cool. The character models are really nice. They have like a unique Aeon Fluxy look to them where characters kind of had longer legs than their bodies. The pre-rendered backgrounds are really nice. The thing about this game that puts it head and shoulders over Resident Evil is the voice acting. We all know that the original Resident Evil had some of the worst voice acting in the history of video games. Don't deny it, because you'd be lying.
Here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
But the voice acting in this game is phenomenal. Everyone sounds like they're into it, they're convincing in their roles, and it makes the game more immersive. Outside of the really crappy tank controls and the fact that you can't control the camera, the gameplay features a lot of trial and error, which is kind of annoying, where you might not know exactly what you need to do when you go into a room. Like at the beginning of the game, you infiltrate this base. You ask a guard if you can take a shower. He tells you to go into the shower room, but you walk in there, and if you walk up to one of the guards, they'll just shoot you and kill you. So you have to figure out exactly what you need to do, but the thing is, you're going to be doing it over and over again because there are no places to save like in Resident Evil with the typewriters. You basically have to start the mission over every time you die, and that can get very frustrating very fast. But if you stick with it, you'll find out that it is a very rewarding game and very, very fun. I've said multiple times on this channel that I love first-person shooters, and there were quite a few great ones on the PS1, but I only wanted to pick one to talk about for this video. Disruptor, which was developed by Insomniac Games. This was a very early PlayStation 1 game, and I remember buying it the day it came out because I love first-person shooters. And the unique thing about this game is, while it is a first-person shooter, which plays exactly like Doom and all the other first-person shooters of that era, this one introduced psychic powers into the mix, and it turned out to make this game fantastic. You play as a new recruit into a military unit where they go on special missions, and if you're deemed worthy, you're allowed to get an upgrade to start using psychic powers. And the government is very hesitant to give you these psychic powers because they cost millions of dollars to install into a person. So every time you beat a level, you get a new upgrade. While it is a very basic first-person shooter, I mean, come on, look at the era this game came out in. It's very fun. It has very solid mechanics, and the gameplay is very fast and very entertaining for those of you who can handle an old-school shooter like this. Because the graphics are nothing to write home about. They're very pixely and blocky. The controls are kind of wonky. They're the old school controls for first-person shooters. There's no analog stick usage with this game. It's all the control pad. And while it does take a little while to get used to, once you do, it's like old hat. There's no real frills in this outside of the psionic powers and the full-motion video intermissions you get between levels. But the weapons are cool, the powers are cool. But the real reason to play this game, and this might just be me, it is the full-motion video intermissions. They feature some of the worst acting and worst dialogue. I mean, it is like atrociously bad.
In the words of your brother, being a stormer, it's more than just kicking ass. Show us you got what it takes, and then maybe, just maybe, we'll send you out on a real mission.
But if you're a connoisseur of like B movies, it's right up your alley. Everything looks cheap and chintzy and just like you can tell they had no budget for these cutscenes, but it kind of gives the game this unique charm where you can see they just wanted to make a very fun game, but they wanted to put these intermissions in there to show off the fact that the PlayStation 1 could do video, so it's just kind of thrown in there for no reason. I could have just done with a story scroll that goes by during the intermissions instead of the video, but it kind of, like I said, makes it very charmingly cheesy. Disruptor is a game you need to play if you're a connoisseur of FPS games like I am. In the pickups video where I discussed this game, I talked about how I am deathly afraid of the ocean. Jaws and other monster movies that take place at sea just kind of effed me up for life. I will not go into any body of water unless it is chlorinated.
Think about that. That's just dumb.
But I love watching movies about sea monsters, and I love playing games that take place in the ocean for some reason. I think subconsciously it's therapeutic. And one of those games that I love is Treasures of the Deep. You're an underwater treasure hunter who goes about trying to collect coins and anything that you can salvage underwater. It is a very, very cool concept that is pulled off very well for the most part. You got 14 missions that take place in real-world locations under the water, like the Bermuda Triangle and the Mariana Trench. You can drive a whole bunch of different vehicles underwater. You can upgrade as you go. During the missions, you're collecting money that you can use to buy new equipment and weapons. You gotta worry about sharks and manta rays and enemies. There's like dudes in submarines that you have to blow up and other scuba divers that are trying to steal your shit. There's lots of wrecks to explore. You have to do a lot of weird stuff like defusing a nuclear bomb for some reason. But the controls are smooth. The objectives, while they are repetitive, they can be extremely fun at times, and the graphics for this generation are extremely sharp. There's no mistaking what you're looking at any point. Everything you have to buy in this game to progress is extremely expensive, so be prepared to be spending a lot of time just looking for money all over the place in every one of these levels, because you're going to need it in order to get anywhere. Although the radar can be a little unreliable and the enemies are extremely cheap at times, I highly recommend it. Great idea for a game that is pulled off extremely well, and no one ever talks about this one. I don't know why, but you need to have it. It is a lot of fun. Next is a game that you would never expect me to talk about on this channel, and that is a sports game.
Oh, hell no!
Not a real honest-to-goodness sport. This is All-Star Slam and D-Ball, people. Yes! If you ever played Super Dodgeball on the NES, you know what to expect. Throwing balls at people's faces, knock their ass out, win the game. So you have 7 teams, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and look. No team has a repeat character like in Super Dodgeball, where it was just basically the same head slapped on every character, maybe a different hairstyle, but they all looked the same. And there's an extra team that you can unlock by beating the game. Gameplay is fast, yet casual. This is a game that you can beat in 10 minutes at most, if you know what you're doing. Each individual round can last for less than a minute. Unlike Super Dodgeball, when you are hit, you're out. There is no health bar for any of the characters. You get hit once, you are out. One little slip up, and your team is annihilated. Game over. But at its heart, it is a very casual style game. I mean, anyone can just pick this up and play it without having to be a hardcore gamer. The graphical artwork is very nice, the music is fine, the controls are very intuitive and easy to pick up, which reinforces the casual gameplay aspect. Although, the presentation of this game is extremely cheap and simple. The levels that you play in, the arenas, all look exactly the same, just with a different coat of paint. The game itself, like I said, is very short, so if you're looking for something that's going to take you hours and hours and hours to master, no. This game can be over, like I said, in 10 minutes. And there's not enough special move variety, but this is a game nobody talks about that is definitely worth your while. It was released as a budget title, and if you can't afford a copy of Super Dodgeball for the NES, which I do recall being pretty expensive the last time I checked, this is a very, very cheap alternative.
Just remember the 5 Ds of dodgeball. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
You like action movies? You like action games? Boy, do I got one for ya. Actually, I have one for you.
It's the motherfucking Eagle Double G.
Snoop Dogg!
Wordplay. This is one of the most fun and frantic action games available for the PS1. I shit you not. This one kind of came out of nowhere and whooped my ass back in the day. I thought it looked kind of cool. I remember seeing a friend playing a demo of it somewhere. I think it might have come with a magazine. And I said, that looks kind of neat. I might want to try that. So when I saw it at a store when it was released, I picked it up and I was not sad that I did. This is still my original copy from back in the day. It is like playing an action movie that just does not stop. The first thing that happens is you start off on a bridge and you are running along a row of windows that are being shot out by a helicopter that's chasing you. You have to dodge obstacles that are falling from the ceiling. You have to dodge missiles that are coming at you, getting shot by the helicopter. It is nuts! And it just never slows down. You play as this dude who's been experimented on. He's trying to escape his captors, and he has been given this metal arm, and he punches people with it until they explode. It is amazing. It has a very, very cinematic presentation. The camera swoops all over the place, and it shows you really awesome angles. It makes it feel like a movie. Combat is extremely fun and addictive. There is running and gunning, there's puzzles, and lots of platforming. Lots of great bosses that take up the entire screen. It is insanity, dude. Although the jumping can be very imprecise because you're able to move around while you're jumping, and the movement is so fast you can just think you're going to land on a platform that you're aiming for and you just go right past it. It can be really upsetting, especially when you're on a roll. But the biggest complaint I have is, though, while the graphics are very impressive, and never a hint of slowdown. They kind of look like they have a layer of static over everything that makes everything look extremely murky. And the best example of this is when the first mini-boss that you fight explodes out of the ground in this one area. Regardless of that, it looks fantastic for the most part. It is well worth your while. One is super fun, it is fast, it is very twitchy, it is like Contra on steroids. And if you like Contra, which I know a lot of you do, you really need to own this game. And if there's one thing the PlayStation 1 was also known for, it was all the different platformers that they had available. Because 3D was the new thing, everyone was trying to make a 3D platformer in the vein of Super Mario 64. A lot of people just ignored the fact that a side-scrolling platformer could still work in 3D, as long as you just played around with camera angles, which is why I love Spider the video game so much. You play as a scientist who is trying to create a robotic spider, and he's assassinated, and while his mind is hooked up to the device that's controlling the spider, his whole mind gets transported into it when he dies, and you're trying to track down the people who killed you so you can get your mind put back into your body. So you control this robot spider for the entire game, and you can upgrade him with weapons and guns, and is kind of bizarre and crazy and awesome at the same time. And the environments are massive because you're walking through a human world when you're only about 2 inches in diameter. It's a unique concept with a cool story. Great weapons, and how they alter your character's look I thought was really nice. The platforming is definitely fun. The enemies are all cool. It's all other robot insects that are in your way, and you can climb on the walls, you can climb on the ceilings, you can spin webs and hang, and you can swing around. There's 30 levels of weirdness in this game. You play through labs and outdoor levels and warehouses and secret layers. The camera is the main problem because it tries to be very cinematic. It's a side-scrolling platformer that is basically 2.5D because it'll be moving left to right until you hit a corner, and then the camera will rotate the level around you so you can continue on. Well, it's great until you're not able to see where you're going because there's something massive in your way and you're waiting for the camera to move. Cinematic camera versus a practical camera that you can control yourself. Would have been nice to be able to have some camera control, but these were the days where you never did have camera control. That didn't really come into play until the PlayStation 2 era. Jumping is very loose. You really can't control where you're going, and you drop like a stone. And while the graphics are nice, it would have been nice to have the camera zoomed out a little bit because it is too close to you to be able to see dangers that are coming. So you end up not running full bore through the level. You have to creep because you never know what's going to be standing right in front of you because, like I said, the camera is too zoomed in. You can't see anything at a distance. And your weapons don't really have a lot of range, so it can be very frustrating and you will die a lot. But Spider is a unique game created by Boss Game Studios, which are a division of Boss, which was a special effect company that worked on movies like Alien 3. They wanted to dip their toe into the video game business to see what they can come up with. And as far as I'm concerned, they came up with a game that is just as unique as it is fun. In the Xbox Diamonds in the Rough video, I talked about a game called Wrath Unleashed. It's set up kind of like a board game where you play on a hexagonal board with a bunch of different players in different places, and you're trying to defeat your enemies on the other side. And whenever you, like chess, take a character's place, you have to fight over it. So it turns into like a one-on-one fighting game. And I think that game is fantastic. It is super fun. There was a version available for it on the PS1 called The Unholy War. There's 10 arenas to fight in, 2 different factions, the Arcane and the Technos, with 14 different unique characters amongst them. Each has their own unique look and power set. You have characters that are like on fire that can fly and shoot flames. There's ones that are made out of metal that have like T-1000 arms. One that's on a rocket sled that can fly around and shoot laser beams at you. There's another guy who has saw blades covering his body that he can either throw at you or spin around at the waist to hack people into pieces. They're all neat looking and kind of cool. The arenas are too. Each one is unique. Some of them have moving platforms. Some of them have dangers like lava. Each one is its own thing. There's 2 different modes to play through. There's a skirmish mode, which is basically just a one-off level, let you play through, try to defeat all the other enemies. And there's the strategy mode, which is basically the story mode, which you play through level after level after level until you beat everybody. And while I love these types of games, the controls are extremely loose. Sometimes you will think you are doing very well. You'll make one little slip up because you hit left a little too long and you get annihilated and you've lost the match. Your character is dead and you have to spend points to reanimate them to bring them back. Kind of sucks. But my biggest gripe is the fact that some of these characters are extremely uneven and cheap, especially the ones that fly. If you're playing as a character who is land-based, there's one that's like a robot that has treads for legs, that is like a tank with an upper torso on it, and you're fighting against a character who can fly, you are basically screwed. Outside of that, this game is fantastic. It was designed by the people who created Star Control 1 and 2, which Star Control 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. So when I bought this back in the day, I bought it based on that fact alone. If you love strategy games, if you love action games, it's the best of both worlds. You could do worse. Like I said earlier, survival horror was a genre that was created on the PS1. Martian Gothic Unification is one of those Resident Evil clones I was talking about within Cold Blood. This one also is well worth your time. It does have a unique spin to it, which sets it head and shoulders above some of the others. I'll explain. With Resident Evil, you had the choice of picking between two different characters to play as, but they each had their own separate storyline. The cool thing about Martian Gothic is that you have 3 characters to play as simultaneously. There was a colony on Mars, communication was lost, an investigation team was sent in to find out what's going on, and they end up crashing, and the 3 investigators have to enter the base at different areas. You can switch between these 3 characters at any time. One character might get stuck in a certain area. You have to switch to another character to find out why they can't go anywhere and to possibly solve that puzzle for them so they can progress. And it's always switching between these 3 characters. So it's kind of like Grand Theft Auto 5 before Grand Theft Auto 5. But it's a survival horror game. And the really cool twist is you are told at the beginning during the cinematic that out of the 3 people that have crash landed on Mars, only 2 of these people will survive by the end. And that makes the game extremely suspenseful. You will eventually come to like each of these characters. You don't want to see any of them die, but one of them is going to have to die. Which one? It could be up to you. Maybe there's a choice coming. Maybe it's something that's going to happen that's going to automatically take a specific character away from you. You don't know. And that is why the game is super, super tense. It has a very interesting and creepy vibe going on. The story is very interesting. It does take a while to get into it because you basically go into the base and you start finding zombies all over the place, but you don't really have any weapons to fight them off with. So at the beginning of the game, you're screwed. But once you get further into the game and you start learning how things work and the hang of the 3-person dynamic, it becomes extremely fun and extremely addictive. The only problem is, yes, just like Resident Evil, you have those damn tank controls and they suck just as bad as they ever have here. The voice acting is horrendous. Like, horrible.
Well, call me a techno-zen hippie, and I've been called that before. But there's a dead man hovering in front of me in the Boulevard Saint-Michel. I can hear him speak, in my mind.
You can tell this game was developed in a foreign country with foreign actors playing these characters because everyone kind of has a weird accent for some reason. It's very strange, and everyone kind of talks in this weird, monotone, unemotional voice, which kind of sucks. The graphics themselves are very unpolished, kind of ugly, and I'm not just talking about the characters, I'm also talking about the pre-rendered backgrounds. Just like in the original Resident Evil and some of these other survival horror games, sometimes it's hard to tell with these backgrounds where you need to go. It doesn't look like there might be a path because it's covered up by something, but there is a path there. You just don't know until you experiment, which is kind of frustrating at times. But this is a very fun game that no one ever talked about. I do believe this also was a budget release. It came out pretty late in the PlayStation 1's life cycle. Resident Evil mixed with a little bit of the Lost Vikings and Ghosts of Mars. You know you want it. And my last selection is another underwater game. Although it is not like Treasures of the Deep. This is not an action-adventure type of game. This one is all about killing. Critical depth. This is Twisted Metal underwater. You heard me. You have a bunch of amphibious vehicles, all unique with their own special weapons. There are also communal weapons that are available for everyone to pick up and use, like missiles and gigantic torpedoes. You have to destroy most, if not all, of the other enemies in the arena in order to progress. There's these orbs that you need to collect over the course of the combat round that when you have enough of them, a portal will open and you need to travel through that in order to move on to the next level. The arenas are designed extremely well with their own secrets, just like Twisted Metal. Some arenas are large, some arenas are small, some of them are vertical, some of them are horizontal, some of them have tunnels you have to travel through that are very cramped. The controls are very easy to learn, even though now you're, instead of being on a 2D plane, you now are moving through a 3D space, up, down, left, and right. The gameplay is super fast, super fun. Sometimes it's a little too hectic for its own good, but that's the way these games are made. And the music is just flat out epic. Although the graphics, while they are pretty cool, and I love the designs of all the characters' ships, the graphics can be a little ugly at times. The backgrounds are muddy or just not detailed. But when it comes down to it, it is basically, like I said, Twisted Metal underwater, so you know exactly what you're going to get. To me, that's not a bad thing, because I love Twisted Metal. The first 2 especially, and then the one for the PlayStation 2, and the one for the PlayStation 3. Please make one for the PlayStation 4. Please. And if you're a fan of these vehicular combat games and you're looking for something a little bit different, Critical depth is where it's at. And that's it for my PlayStation 1 diamonds in the rough. Have you played any of these games before? Let me know in the comments below. What games do you think flew under the radar that just don't get any love at all? Let me know. I'm interested. I might own some, I might not. Maybe I'll end up looking for a few of them if you suggest some good ones. Share the video on the social media, give it a thumbs up if you like what you see, and please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I am Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off.